Were you a good student growing up?
I was a conscientious student, but I spent half my time in the theatre.
Yeah.
We can't jump from the...
When you think of Catherine Zeta-Jones, what comes to mind? Maybe it's her
rooftop shouting, about, I have this, look at me, victim. No.
her stunning beauty, her incredible dancing in Chicago, or her fairy tale marriage to Michael Douglas. But behind all that glamour lies a story so heartbreaking, so filled with pain and struggle, that it will change how you see this Hollywood icon forever. What you're about to discover isn't just another celebrity story. It's the raw truth about a woman who has been fighting battles most of us can't even imagine, battles that started when she was just a tiny child and continue to this day at 55 years old. This is a story of survival, of hidden scars, and of a strength that goes far beyond anything you've ever seen on the silver screen. If you've ever felt inspired by Catherine's grace and elegance, you need to hear this, because sometimes the most beautiful people carry the deepest wounds, and Catherine's journey will touch your heart in ways you never expected. The first fight of Catherine's life didn't happen on a movie set or on a stage. It happened in a hospital room when she was barely old enough to walk. Imagine a little girl, not even 2 years old, struggling to breathe. Her tiny throat was closing up from a terrible infection, and doctors had to make a desperate choice to save her life. They performed an emergency surgery called a tracheotomy, which means they had to cut a hole in her throat so she could breathe. This left Catherine with a scar just below her chin, a mark that would stay with her for the rest of her life. Even today, if you look closely at photos of her, you can still see that faint line hidden beneath years of makeup and glamour. But that scar represents so much more than just a childhood accident. It was the first sign that Catherine's life would be filled with battles that others couldn't see. From her very first breath, she had to fight to survive, and that fighting spirit would carry her through everything that was to come. Catherine was born on September 25, 1969, in a small town called Swansea in Wales. Her family wasn't rich or famous. Her dad ran a simple bakery, working long hours to make ends meet. Her mom was a seamstress, carefully stitching clothes to help support the family. They lived in a modest home on narrow streets where every penny had to be counted. But even as a little girl, Catherine was different. She would dance around their tiny living room like she was performing on the world's biggest stage. She sang with a voice that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her soul. Her parents noticed that their daughter had something special, something that couldn't be taught or bought. Then something amazing happened that changed everything. Catherine's family won £100,000 in the national lottery. For a working-class family like theirs, this was like winning $1 million today. But instead of spending the money on fancy cars or vacations, they made a choice that would shape Catherine's entire future. They used that money to invest in their daughter's dreams. They bought a pastry shop to give the family more stability, moved to a better neighborhood, and most importantly, they paid for Catherine's dance lessons, singing coaches, and acting classes. Her father later said in an interview that Catherine had this fire inside her from the very beginning, and all they did was give it room to grow. By the time Catherine was 4 years old, she was already performing in local church halls. The audience would watch in amazement as this tiny girl commanded the stage with the confidence of someone 3 times her age. When she turned 11, she landed the lead role in Annie, one of the most beloved musicals of all time. And at 13, she was starring in Bugsy Malone, captivating audiences night after night. But here's the heartbreaking part that most people don't know. With every step Catherine took into the spotlight, she was leaving pieces of her childhood behind. While other kids her age were playing games, having sleepovers, and just being kids, Catherine was rehearsing for hours, traveling to different cities and carrying the pressure of never making a mistake. When Catherine was just 15 years old, she faced a decision that would terrify most adults. She was offered a starring role in a big London production called The Pajama Game. But there was a catch. To take the role, she would have to drop out of school completely and bet everything on her acting career. Think about that for a moment. At 15, most of us are worried about homework and what to wear to school. Catherine was deciding whether to risk her entire future on a dream. There was no backup plan, no safety net. If her acting career failed, she would have nothing to fall back on. But Catherine made the brave choice to leave school and follow her heart. She later said there was no plan B for her. Acting wasn't just what she wanted to do, it was who she was. This decision showed incredible courage, But it also meant that Catherine never really got to be a normal teenager. She was thrust into the adult world of professional acting, where she had to learn to survive in rooms full of critics, directors, and people who could make or break her career. When Catherine was 21, she thought her big break had finally come. She landed her first movie role in a French film called 1001 Nights. She was so excited, imagining that this would be her ticket to Hollywood stardom. But what happened next was devastating. The movie was a complete disaster. It sold less than 750 tickets in all of France. Can you imagine how crushing that must have been? Catherine had put everything into this role, and it felt like the world was telling her she wasn't good enough. The film made almost no money and was completely ignored by critics and audiences alike. For many people, this kind of failure would have been the end of their dreams. But Catherine didn't give up. Instead, she went back to England and started rebuilding her career from the ground up. She took a role in a TV series called The Darling Buds of May, and slowly, people in England began to notice her talent. The show was a hit, and Catherine became well known throughout the UK. But she still had her eyes set on Hollywood, and that journey was going to be much harder than she ever imagined. When Catherine finally made it to America, she discovered that Hollywood didn't care about her success in England. To casting directors, she was just another pretty face with a British accent. They didn't see her as leading lady material, and getting good roles was incredibly difficult. She took whatever work she could find, appearing in movies like Splitting Heirs and The Phantom, but none of these films were successful, and with each disappointment, Catherine began to doubt herself. She later admitted that there were times when she wondered if maybe everyone was right, maybe she didn't have what it took to make it in Hollywood. This was probably the darkest period of Catherine's early career. She was in her 20s, far from home, watching other actresses get the roles she desperately wanted. Every audition felt like another rejection, and the dream that had sustained her since childhood was starting to feel impossible. But sometimes, life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. In 1998, legendary director Steven Spielberg saw something special in Catherine. Whether it was her work on the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles or another project, something about her stayed with him, and when the perfect role came along, he thought of her. That role was Elena in The Mask of Zorro, and it would change Catherine's life forever. But even getting this part wasn't easy. She had to compete against actresses like Penelope Cruz and Salma Hayek, who were already well known to American audiences. Catherine had to fight for this role, prove that she deserved it, and train harder than she had ever trained before. For months, Catherine worked in secret, learning sword fighting, horseback riding, and perfecting her accent. She fell off horses, got bruises all over her body, and her hands were cut up from hours of sword practice. But she never complained because she knew this was her chance. When The Mask of Zorro came out, it was a massive success, making over $250 million worldwide. Overnight, Catherine Zeta-Jones became a household name. Her image was everywhere, and she was suddenly one of the most sought-after actresses in Hollywood. But even with all this success, Catherine never forgot how hard she had worked to get there. She was always afraid that it could all disappear as quickly as it had come. So she didn't slow down. She took role after role, always pushing herself to be better. In 1999, she starred in Entrapment with Sean Connery, delivering one of the most iconic scenes in movie history as she gracefully moved through a maze of laser beams. Then came Traffic in 2000, where she showed her dramatic acting skills and earned critical acclaim. But nothing could have prepared anyone for what Catherine would do in 2002. While she was pregnant with her daughter, she took on the role of Velma Kelly in Chicago. This wasn't just any role, it was one of the most demanding parts in musical theater, requiring incredible singing, dancing, and acting skills. Catherine was literally performing some of the most challenging dance numbers ever put on film while carrying a baby. The physical and emotional demands were enormous, but she pulled it off with such grace and power that she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. The image of Catherine accepting her Oscar while pregnant is one of the most powerful moments in awards show history. She was glowing with pride, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been told they weren't good enough. 10 days later, she gave birth to her daughter Karis, making 2002 one of the most incredible years of her life. Around the same time Catherine's career was taking off, she met a man who would change her personal life forever. Michael Douglas was already a Hollywood legend when they first crossed paths at a film festival in France. He was 53, she was 28. The 25-year age gap raised eyebrows, but there was something undeniable between them. Their first meeting was actually pretty awkward. Michael walked up to Catherine and said, "You're going to be the mother of my children." Catherine was shocked, and not in a good way. She thought he was being arrogant and presumptuous. But Michael quickly realized his mistake and sent her flowers with a heartfelt apology. What followed was 9 months of long-distance phone calls. They would talk for hours across different time zones, sharing their deepest thoughts, fears, and dreams. Catherine found herself falling in love not with the movie star Michael Douglas, but with the man behind the fame. On New Year's Eve 1999, both of them were sick with the flu, wrapped in blankets in a hotel room in Aspen. It wasn't the most romantic setting, but that's when Michael proposed with a beautiful vintage diamond ring. Despite the tissues and sneezing, Catherine said yes without hesitation. Their wedding in November 2000 was like something out of a fairy tale. They spent $1.5 million on the ceremony at the Plaza Hotel in New York. Their baby son Dylan, who was just 3 months old, was there in Michael's arms. The guest list included some of the biggest names in Hollywood, from Tom Hanks to Steven Spielberg, but even their dream wedding wasn't without problems. Despite selling exclusive photo rights to one magazine, photographers from another publication snuck in and took unauthorized pictures. Catherine and Michael sued, but the legal battle dragged on for years and left Catherine feeling like her privacy had been violated on what should have been the happiest day of her life. After their son Dylan was born in 2000 and daughter Karis arrived in 2003, Catherine and Michael made a surprising decision. They moved away from Hollywood to the peaceful island of Bermuda, where Michael had family connections. For 6 years, they lived there quietly, raising their children away from the constant spotlight and media attention. Catherine later said, this was the first time in her adult life when she didn't hear the word action for months, and she loved it. She was able to just be a mother and wife without worrying about cameras or headlines. But even in this paradise, shadows were starting to form. During these years, Catherine began experiencing severe mood swings and periods of deep depression that she couldn't explain. There were days when she could barely get out of bed, and nights when she felt like she was drowning in sadness. She tried to hide these feelings from everyone, putting on a brave face for her family and the public. The pressure of being everything to everyone was taking its toll. She was expected to be the perfect wife, the devoted mother, and the glamorous movie star all at the same time. But inside she was falling apart, and she didn't know how to ask for help. In 2009, the family faced another devastating blow when Michael's oldest son, Cameron, from his previous marriage, was arrested on serious drug charges. The media had a field day with the story, and Catherine found herself trying to support her heartbroken husband while protecting her own young children from the ugly headlines. But the worst was yet to come. In 2010, Michael was diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer, one of the most serious forms of the disease. Catherine's world completely fell apart. The man she loved, who had always been so strong and confident, was now fighting for his life. Catherine spent countless hours in hospital rooms, holding Michael's hand as he went through brutal chemotherapy treatments. She watched him lose weight, lose his hair, and lose the vibrant energy that had first attracted her to him. There were moments when she wondered if she was going to lose the love of her life. During this incredibly difficult time, Michael made some comments to the media about his cancer that caused a huge controversy. Without going into the details, his words were twisted and sensationalized by the press, creating a media storm that dragged Catherine into the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. Catherine felt betrayed and humiliated. Here she was, trying to care for her sick husband and keep her family together, and suddenly she was being judged and criticized by people who knew nothing about what they were going through. It was one of the lowest points in her life. The stress and pressure finally became too much. In 2011, Catherine checked herself into a mental health facility in Connecticut. For the first time, she was forced to confront the depression and mood swings that had been plaguing her for years. The doctors diagnosed her with bipolar disorder, a condition that affects millions of people but is rarely discussed openly, especially in Hollywood. When the news of her treatment became public, Catherine made a brave decision. Instead of hiding or making excuses, she spoke honestly about her mental health struggles. She told the world that bipolar disorder was nothing to be ashamed of, and that seeking help was a sign of strength, not weakness. Her honesty was revolutionary. In an industry where image is everything, Catherine was willing to show her vulnerability and admit that she wasn't perfect. Thousands of fans wrote to thank her for speaking out, saying that her courage helped them seek treatment for their own mental health issues. But even with professional help, Catherine's personal life continued to be challenging. The stress of Michael's illness, the media attention, and her own mental health struggles put enormous strain on their marriage. In 2013, after 13 years together, Catherine and Michael announced they were separating. The media went crazy with speculation. Tabloids created wild stories about affairs and betrayals, but the truth was much simpler and more heartbreaking. They were both exhausted, both hurting, and both trying to figure out how to heal themselves and their relationship. For 8 months, they lived apart. Catherine later described this as one of the darkest periods of her life. At 44 years old, she found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about love, marriage, and her own worth. She would lie awake at night, wondering if she had lost not just her husband, but her best friend and the father of her children. Friends said she barely spoke about Michael during this time, except once when she whispered, "You don't stop loving someone just because you're hurting." That simple statement showed the depth of her pain and the complexity of their situation. But love has a way of finding its way back when it's real. After 8 months of soul-searching, Catherine and Michael quietly chose each other again. There was no big announcement, no dramatic reconciliation scene. They simply decided that their love was worth fighting for, even if it meant doing the hard work of rebuilding their relationship from the ground up. Their reunion wasn't the end of their challenges. In 2018, Michael faced allegations of sexual misconduct, adding another layer of stress and public scrutiny to their lives. Catherine stood by her husband publicly, but privately. Sources say she was heartbroken by having to deal with yet another scandal. Through all of these ups and downs, Catherine has shown incredible resilience. She's continued to work, taking on roles that showcase her talent and remind the world why she became a star in the first place. In 2022, she stunned audiences with her performance as Morticia Addams in the Netflix series Wednesday, proving that she can still captivate viewers after all these years. Today, at 55, Catherine splits her time between a beautiful villa in Spain and an apartment overlooking Central Park in New York. She's built a successful lifestyle business, earning millions from endorsements in her own product lines. In 2010, she was honored by the British government for her contributions to drama, receiving the title of Commander of the Order of the British Empire. But perhaps most importantly, Catherine has found a sense of peace that had eluded her for so many years. Her marriage to Michael, while unconventional, has survived more challenges than most couples face in a lifetime. They've learned to give each other space while still being committed partners and loving parents. Catherine continues to manage her bipolar disorder with medication, therapy, and a healthy lifestyle. She's become an advocate for mental health awareness, using her platform to encourage others to seek help when they need it. She starts each day with meditation and breathing exercises, and she's learned to prioritize her own well-being. Her children, Dylan and Karis, are now young adults finding their own paths in life. Catherine has worked hard to give them as normal a childhood as possible, despite their parents' fame. Recent photos of Catherine with her daughter show how much they look alike, and it's clear that Catherine has passed on not just her beauty, but her strength and grace. Looking at Catherine today, you see a woman who has been through incredible trials and emerged with her dignity intact. She's no longer the young actress desperately trying to prove herself in Hollywood. She's a mature woman who has learned that true strength comes not from never falling down, but from always getting back up. The scar beneath her chin from that childhood surgery is still there, faint but visible. It serves as a reminder of that first fight for breath, that first battle for survival. In many ways, Catherine has been fighting that same fight her entire life, and she's never given up. Her story is heartbreaking because of all the pain she's endured, but it's also incredibly inspiring because of how she's handled that pain. She's shown us that it's okay to not be okay, that seeking help is brave, and that love can survive even the most difficult challenges. At 55, Catherine Zeta-Jones is still beautiful, still talented, and still fighting. She's proven that true glamour isn't about perfect red carpet appearances or flawless magazine covers. It's about facing life's hardest moments with grace, courage, and an unbreakable spirit. Her journey reminds us that everyone we meet is fighting battles we know nothing about. The next time you see someone who seems to have it all together, remember Catherine's story. Behind the most beautiful smiles can be the deepest struggles, and that's exactly what makes someone's strength so remarkable. Catherine Zeta-Jones has given us more than just entertainment over the years. She's given us a masterclass in resilience, showing us that no matter how many times life knocks us down, we can always choose to get back up, and that might be the most beautiful performance of her entire career. If Catherine's incredible journey has touched your heart, please hit that like button to show your support for her courage and strength. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear a story of hope and resilience. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories about the real people behind the fame. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that happen when the cameras stop rolling, and Catherine Zeta-Jones has shown us that real life can be more dramatic and more inspiring than any movie script. Thank you for watching, and remember that your story matters too.